Hey guys, it's Matt. I've been staring at these notes for I don't know how long now, and I thought there's no way to go about this formally. You just have to start talking. I know what you're looking at is just a mess. I don't expect you to even look at it, to interpret it. It's really for me and again, if you're driving or just listening, you don't need to see this impossible graphic. If this concept or idea gets worked out over time, then this graphic will improve, just like the concentric reality circles. I'll try to tie that in as well to how reality is a computer, basically, or uses the computer model, like what I'm showing here. But TJ, for example, he created a graphic, which I haven't shown you guys yet, a much better looking graphic of the concentric reality circles. I just haven't been able to show anybody that yet, but I thank TJ for doing that. We'll do something similar with this mess. So I'm going to be stopping and starting a lot. I don't know where to start, so I guess I'll just jump in whenever I get stuck with a concept this big. And the concept is the reality itself. We're in some sort of fractal, as above, so below. As you get smaller, the similarities carry forth. As you get larger, the similarities of the small carry forth to the large. The way an atom looks, or as what they tell us a solar system is, or a galaxy looks, for example. So the whole overarching reality seems to be structured just like your personal computer. And we've seen these images in other YouTube videos where someone will show an overhead shot of a city and certain buildings. It looks just like a motherboard. And when we first saw that, we were like, yeah, that's neat, but it's real for the most part. I don't think a city is actually a motherboard, but it's a fractal. It's just the reality itself is really just a much larger computer. And I'm going to try to, in this presentation, they'll be all over the place, take you through the inputs and where there is a virus, there is an evil actor, an evil doer. They're trying to screw the system over, and I'm going to try to bring that in as to where their reality buttons and levers really lie. Let's start with the absolute basics. Again, the presentation here it's in rough draft. It will be refined over time. The reality itself, as large as it is basically really no different than a computer, a personal computer model, where it's on your desk with a screen, a monitor, a tower, an operating system, a processor. So let's just start from the basics. Power cord. On a computer, it doesn't get any more basic than that. The power cord, the source of power in this reality, I believe L.C. King, I have mentioned his channel before, L.C. King. I'll try to link if I remember, but I've referred you over to his channel before. His model is the closest to the power cord of what this reality is. The power is derived from the sun and the moon working together. They're brothers from the same mother. They're the same size. The eclipse shows you that. They're somewhat local. They work with the oceans and the earth as a salt bridge to create power and basically an almost never-ending source of energy for this realm. That's simply the power cord. For when we take it down to the small or the micro, that's the power cord that plugs in the PC or the tower. If anybody's saying to me, well, Matt, you think the world is very illusory, very much of a simulation or a matrix, why do you need something somewhat physical, the earth or the sun working with the moon, the positive and the negative, and the earth and the salt bridge to create something like a battery? Why do you even need these physical things? Well, because it's not just a video game here. There's much more real components to it. This matrix has rules. If you drop a brick down on your foot, it will hurt. There's a physicality to it that will make it. It's mostly a dream, mostly a video game, in my opinion. But there's elements like that where it has to be backed up by what I would call, or what seems to be, quote, real. So, yeah, a video game could just put in a fake sun and beam down fake power. But again, we're not going to, in this limited avatar, we're not going to understand the ins and outs of it. I go back to the movie The Matrix, where it says the Matrix has rules. And there has to be a somewhat of a real element. And whoever constructed this place uses the sun and the moon with the earth as a salt bridge. And the L.C. King model is probably the closest to how it works. Of course, that means the Stephen Hawking models, the models of astrophysicists and astronomers at Cambridge and Harvard and Yale, and just completely fooled, completely lost. I don't care what their math tells them. I don't think they have any understanding how even the solar system works, let alone the Milky Way or the universe. And, most of these people are not in on it. They're simply fooled by the data that the reality presents. The reality is the event horizon. It will show them exactly what they need to come to certain conclusions. People like Neil Cut the Grass Tyson, he is an actor in the system. He is in on it, like other monsters, like Michio Pikachu, or whatever those guys. All those guys are cut from the same mold. Brian Cox, all these clowns. So that's the power cord. It's pretty simple. Just go to the LC King channel. The Stephen Hawking model is a joke. The Big Bang is a joke. Flava Flav 911 is a joke. It's all this 911 is joke in Yorktown. I mean, it's probably a 7-Eleven part-time job truth drop in the Flava Flav Public Enemy song. Anyway, don't mean to get too stupid, but let's go on. The second major part is, let's just go. Well, I'm not even following the numbers. Number 5 on my diagram was the power cord. I'm trying to go from basic to more complicated. It's working up from the most basic to the more complicated. Number 1 on this diagram is the screen. It's the monitor on the computer, is the outer reality screen in my concentric reality bubbles presentation, and it's simply the screen, whatever stands behind it, and the minions trying to get our attention. It's everything. I'm not just talking about your television or movies. I'm talking about the presentation of society itself. What's considered a success? What's considered good or bad? Or, all the stuff that comes from the screen down onto society. All this stuff with race now, it's completely cooked up. So the screen, from the people listening to this perspective, we're pretty clear on what that is. There's not a lot of reason to spend too much time on that. Number 2, the main part, okay, the Earth itself. And I'd like to, by the way, before I forget, I want to thank Izzo for helping me through some of these concepts and concepts that he's been looking at for many years. He didn't even know that I was looking at the same thing until I mentioned a few videos back. Then we've been exchanging ever since. So inside the Earth itself is the tower, say, of the PC. Do they even still have these? I guess they do, but I haven't bought a PC like that for so long. There used to be a tower on the ground, and that would be the Earth itself. And the most important part inside that is, of course, the processor. Now, this is where I put real human beings as the Intel Pentium 2 processor. The real human beings. In my notes here, I have the processor and likely the programmer and the coder. Or if this is some sort of matrix or dream environment or Maya, it's David Lynch's Dreamer. The power, not the physical power that comes from the power source, but the power of the reality manifestation, I believe, comes from the processor. Nothing in a computer comes out unless the processor. That's us, in my opinion. And the basic idea here is, of course, this dark element that exists here just wants to fool the processor into putting out the output that it wants. All right? So we'll come back to this. We're the processor, potentially the programmer, and the coder. And of course, per your suggestions and everything in comments, this is going to change a little bit. So let's just keep going. The initial operating system, all right, I have is number 6 here. The initial operating system, the motherboards, would be more the BIOS, and think of that word, basic input-output system, BIOS. Now, in a computer, a BIOS is like the startup program. First thing that starts up, allows everything to start working together. Like the operating system will then see your mouse and know what the mouse is supposed to do, and things like that. So the monitor works. Very basic BIOS. And think how interesting so you can almost see the word biology in BIOS, even though somebody's going to scream at me and say, "Matt, it means basic input output system." Well, yeah, but is it a coincidence? It just screams BIOS, biology. There's a lot of things that these things start matching up in odd ways. Like when we look down at a city, it looks like a motherboard, and this is just one of those areas. So you have the initial operating system, which to me is like nature, the laws of physics, how the wind blows here. If you drop a rock, it will fall. Things that the creeps have no way of changing. There's something laid down here. They're trying to get their virus, and here we go again. We have a computer virus. We have a virus on the reality operating system itself being mostly carried forth by a human V, and what's going on now with CV. So to me, this is like the operating system. I hate to use a Melvin Gates reference, but Windows or Linux, whatever. Okay, more like nature or natural law. I don't know exactly how to describe this, but you know what I mean. So that's 6. All right. Now, where the dark element comes in, by the way, on top of the, I don't know how to really show this, but on top, if anybody is looking at the diagram, which you don't have to, and again, it'll only distract you from what I'm saying, I have a projector sitting on top of the tower, and the projector is projecting basically reality itself, or the way a society moves based on our inputs, our manifestations of coming from the processor, ultimately turns into a projector, which becomes reality itself. So number 3 here I have as a USB port. And this is where the dark element is first, he tries to get its sticky fingers in, how it's tapped right into how reality works with its reality buttons and levers. So 3, think of a USB drive, just pushing it into a USB receptacle port. All of its inputs, all the unnatural input, we have nothing to do with the USB inputs. It's created a USB input into reality itself. And it goes back and puts its new viruses on its USB. It's like this slimy, mold-covered USB drive that it keeps trying to plug into the port. And it has, stuff like everything's on there. What government is. It's all of its systems, all of its laws, its educational systems, its societal norms, social norms, its definition of success, what medicines are to treat what, how doctors operating inside of a little box where things can only be treated with 3 different methods, not alternative methods or Eastern methods, how to live your life. I mean, it's all of it comes through this USB port that ultimately, it can't affect the operating system too much, but it can kind of create a feedback loop of some kind on the processor, which is the creative power of real human beings. So as long as it creates like remember a defragger? We used to defrag computers. I remember doing that in the 90s. Anybody under 40 is like, a defragger? You used to defrag your computer overnight. What the F's that? I don't know. You do this defrag program. You saw these boxes like the hard drive. Maybe you can still do it. It doesn't matter. The hard drive would kind of reconfigure itself, and so you'd have more space, or things would work a little bit more smoothly. I don't know. But it's always through its inputs. It's always trying to rearrange things. So the processor, the creative power, which is us, is running the wrong programs or giving the wrong output to the projector, creating the reality it wants. For example, the Borg in Star Trek, when they take over a ship, they immediately change the environmental controls. In fact, I think there's an episode where they almost know the Borg is on board, because LaForge is like, the temperature's gone up 4 degrees and the humidity's gone up 20%. They like high temperature, high humidity. They need to, the Borg will want to shape reality to what they need to operate. And that's what the minions, on behalf of whatever this thing is, this dark thing that stands behind the screen, we'll debate that some other time. It uses its inputs to have the processor create the reality it wants, and an ideal environment for it, using government, Hollywood's its laws, its statutes, its ordinance, its systems. And of course, where are we today? The processor, the creative power, or again, I have it as number 2, the programmer, the coder, David Lynch's dreamer, whatever, is always creating inside the confines of all these processes that have been put around it, like shackles, or simply like a maze. In a maze, you can't just go left. There's a wall. It guides the process or the creative power. And people don't even think they have the power to step outside of these sick guides and these sick walls. And again, it's everything. I always go back to Shawshank. There's so much in Shawshank that is a truth drop. It's really absurd. That's why it's run over and over and over and over. That's why it's run tens of thousands of times on cable over the last 10 years, because it has to keep being put out. It has to, for some reason. It's an absolute truth drop. It's a great movie. If anybody's saying, well, Matt, it's a really, really good. Yeah, it is a great movie, but to me, that's not the reason it's run over and over and over and over again. It has more to do with metaphysical truths, like the walls of Shawshank, the confines of keeping the real human being, the Andy Dufresne, in. And his creative power is limited to nothing. He can only carve chess pieces from rocks, and he can't use his creative powers. He's inside these walls. Eventually, he gets out. He breaks free. He crawls through a river of shit. But that's what the USB drive is. So again, it is in line with the way many of us believe this dark element is coming in from the outside of some kind. We don't know what anybody new to this channel. Well, what is it? We don't know. We'll never know. A Christian would call it Satan. Other truthers call it, dark aliens or archons. Or it doesn't matter, because we'll never know. We've done the police lineup. When you keep bringing them out in front of the police lineup in the one-way glass, the one-way mirror, it's the same cast of characters that bring out the usual suspects every single time, and we're no closer to finding the culprit now. I know a Christian would say Satan. I'm well aware of that. But I'm saying there's so you can bring out the reptilians, you can bring out the Greys, you can bring out all these bad guys, the ancient families, the Rothschilds. We're no closer. We understand that's why I just call it the overarching reality itself uses its minions, uses its systems, uses its Nora O'Donnells and its Anderson Coopers. So that's the USB input. Which I missed at number 4. Let's just go. Number 4 is off to the side. I just drew a modem with its Wi-Fi receptors and antenna. Off to the side is an old modem. And I'm just kind of saying here it's, how all tech that supports the slimy USB drive, all tech that supports the minions, all tech that supports the screen is inside this metaphor of the modem. Anything from 5G to predictive program movies, iPhones, of course, MP3s. What they did to music with MP3s, where you only hear one little slice at a time. That's why they can cut 95% of the file size out. Who knows what messages you can slice and dice a music file where, let's just say, the Phil Collins In the Air Tonight, when the drums kick in, I can feel it coming in the air tonight, the drums, everybody knows that, right? Well, in an MP3, when that drum is hitting, because the drum is so prominent, all the other instruments are still playing if you were watching a concert, but they're all cut out of the file. It slices and dices it, but the brain inside the human avatar hears Phil Collins In the Air Tonight, and it sounds the same as if you were in concert, and you don't understand all the other instruments have been cut out. That's the concept of an MP3. But if they can slice and dice like that, who knows? You want to talk about some liminals from the 50s that flash a thing of popcorn in a millisecond. So, ooh, I'm hungry for popcorn. Think of what they can do inside these files or inside frame rates of a smart TV. I don't think I'm not affected. For some reason, you're not affected, and people have been pushing me to kind of come up with a commonality as to why we're not affected. We'll do that at some point. Maybe we are affected, but just less. Maybe if we were completely unaffected, it would be, maybe that's what a paranoid schizophrenic is, or they're completely unaffected. They see reality for what it is, and they just can't take it. I mean, that's possible. That some people explain some forms of psychosis or schizophrenia as a pure unfiltered input of reality itself, and simply you can't take it. It would drive you crazy if it wasn't filtered. So it's definitely still filtered for us. It's just a whole lot less. And we've talked about the term dropping veils in that regard. So someone could argue that the screen itself, or in this depiction, the monitor, is not a original element of the system. It's kind of inserted itself, or it might have been an original element, but it was a very, very minor, where as it's inserted itself over time, this screen that yells down at the processor or the human manifestors, look at me, hey, assholes, look over here, Oh, we can't get your attention with the red carpet? Oh, how about we just drop these buildings in a 7-Eleven job application? I bet that'll get your attention. The screen is grown, so it was maybe a little input. Well, we're not really affecting the processor and the programmer. And now it's this, real human beings. We're inside this gigantic IMAX, like surrounds us with booming sound. The screen is so massive, and its purpose, it's grown over time. In my opinion, it's grown in its influence. And, if anyone's still looking at the image, I hope you're not actually, but there's an arrow from the screen down to the processor, an arrow from the processor up to the screen. So it's like the chicken and the egg creating these feedback loops. Hey, real creative beings, processors, you Intel, Pentium, whatever's putzes, look at me. Look what happened when you submitted the 7-Eleven job application. Oh, no. Now we're going to be terrified of these groups for 20 years. And then that's a feedback loop. And then the processor goes out and it creates more of the reality they want. And then you have ridiculous incidences like Richard Reed shoe and underwear bombers and things like that. And it just feeds on itself. So once the screen gets, it's like hooking a fish, and then the processor creative beings then just keeps looking at the screen and then just keeps feeding more of what it wants through its projector. And I have the eye drawn here. I don't really want to speculate too much on the eye. I'm well aware of all the old theories. Eye of Horus. Well, what does that really mean? Eye of Osiris or Eye of Horus. What does that really mean? This right eye cover the sun, the moon. I know. I'm aware of all that. To me, the eye is a little bit more than that, in my opinion. But I'm not really prepared to talk about here what my theories would be on that. So I've drawn in here for my own purposes. It has to do, in my opinion, with actual creative reality creation power. We'll talk about that some other time. Okay, it's probably appropriate to get into this. This is very interesting. The Matrix continues to be a truth drop movie. It just keeps producing in terms of giving us a window or a guide into how reality itself works. Of course, as a movie coming from Hollywood, it's also going to be filled with deception. So you have to take away what you believe the real truth in it to be. So in the movie, of course, human beings in a pod just presented as batteries, which is ridiculous. Even the way the movie presents it. Morpheus, Lawrence Fishburne, somehow he gets away with the worst overacting job of all time. I'm not even going to try to do it, but it's just kind of it's just kind of his character is kind of beloved now, and we kind of look the other way as to how horrible the acting is. But he says human beings are combined with a form of fusion. The machines will have all the power they will ever need because the human being produces so much energy of BTUs. So it's ridiculous. Fusion would produce hundreds of millions of times more power than a human being would. Two human beings trying to get warm under the covers. That's not. They wouldn't need that. They wouldn't. Fusion would be enough, and they already said they have fusion. So that's like. I don't know. It's like spending $100,000, souping up your old your Chevy Nova hot rod with gigantic tires in the back and new turbochargers, and then just thinking like STP gas treatment is going to help it go faster. You wouldn't need humans as batteries. I should just get to the point here. The original Matrix movie fandom clearly says, or the idea was supposed to be, the minds of the humans in the pods were combined as a form of biocomputing, a biocomputing neural network. So the minds or the creativity of real humans in the pods actually was the processor for the Matrix itself, exactly like what I'm presenting here. Again, this is pretty easy fandom to find on the movie The Matrix. It says working as a sub-processor to create the virtual world. So if you dig into it, they said, well, that concept was too heavy for the movie, and it was better to just go out with the movie as a battery. And I don't know. It just is that somebody at the last second say, "What's this in here, boy?" Oh, that's too much truth. You can't tell them. You can't just tell them that they're the processors for this Matrix themselves. Take that out of there. Just say you're this. Change Morpheus's line, Lawrence Fishburne. He'll read it the same way either way. Just make it seem like human beings are just battery, even though we'll tell them they have fusion, which is hundreds of millions of times more powerful. It's like you have this roaring fireplace, gigantic Harry Potter fireplace with 20 logs stocked up and all this heat, and then somebody's trying to light a match off to the side for an additional amount of heat. You wouldn't need the human beings. So that it's so absurd, it just gives it away that of course that's the real, and even real reason for the Matrix presentation is human beings as processing power. And when you look at the images of the machine city and the human beings in the pods and all the electricity and currents flowing back and forth, it looks like a processor. It doesn't look like a battery. So that was probably last second truth held out. They said if we could have done the same to George Lucas in the original 3 Star Wars, we wouldn't have the problems we have today, trying to spend 30 years on the back end trying to destroy the first 3. Okay, this is from Izzo. This is very, very interesting. Open source beings and closed source beings. So I'll get to that in a moment. Let's start with the absolute basics. When you buy a Hewlett-Packard computer tower, it has Windows, the operating system. Everything is all closed source. It all comes from the manufacturer. You can't change anything. You have to take their options. Then I'll do 30 seconds for those that don't know what Linux is and open source. There's other operating systems you can get for free on the internet. Mostly common is Linux, where you can load an operating system or load a web browser, and a lot of the web browsers will look different. Somebody a few miles down the road, it might look a little different because it's open source. People are constantly tweaking it. They're allowed to get to the code and tweak it. They're allowed to add to it. People, improve it. Repeating a thing, don't improve it. None from Cold Mountain, but I guess repeat and try to make an operating system good in the case of Linux does. But so this is open source, but Izzo's like, there's open source and closed source beings. And he's saying let's just say an open source being would be somebody like you and me, open to changing, not running scripts, open-minded, being able to recognize when one has made a mistake in one's belief system. A closed source being isn't open to anything. And this Izzo really, really does a good job here. It ties up a lot of loose ends in when I've talked about people that run the download, people that run the scripts. My recent thing is the download. But for years I've been talking, and I couldn't explain it at all. I still can't explain it. But I would say these people, it's almost like they run scripts, and I've carried that through over the years. Like Hong Kong had three big Ds from this thing, with 7 million people living on top of each other. That's just to an open source being, that's completely nonsensical. Hong Kong couldn't have 3 big Ds, 3 big McDs by July, with 7 million people living on top of each other, with them saying how it spreads and all this stuff. And Hong Kong is not. It's not a giant hospital. They have slums. They have back alleys where Bruce Lee had his fist fights, and they have, it's just not. It's the place where it would go crazy. It would go wild if it is what they say it is. So so these people run their scripts. I tell that to Ken or whoever, and people like, I'm sorry, Ken, if you're listening, but I don't. Just people will run their scripts and say, well, they know how to handle it. That's a script. That doesn't make any sense. What do you mean they know how to handle it? What does that even mean? There's a whole section of Hong Kong living in poverty with, it's high rents. So you'd have a 3-room apartment with 15 workers living in the 3 rooms and 1 bathroom. You'd have a ton of that. Migrant workers. You'd have a ton of that, of course. I don't have to go and examine every room to know that exists in a gigantic city with really high rents. I mean, they know how to handle it. 15 people living in 3 rooms and 1 bathroom that's never cleaned since 1965 ain't handling it, dude. Know how to handle. That's what they run these scripts. That's what they say. They know how to, it's already a masked society. What is that? So the 15 people, workers in the 3 bedrooms and the 1 old bathroom, the broken toilet, they're just wearing masks all the time, and that keeps them perfectly safe. Of course, we go on forever. It's nonsensical. It's script running. This is, Izzo puts it perfectly, a closed source being. It will never be able to, this relates to when I've said it can't give you an inch back. When Tony can't say, Matt, that's insane to say they put this parent out there as playing 2 roles, and that's insane. But I'll give you this, Matt. They look exactly alike. You're right, Matt. They look so much alike, it's scary, but that can't be the case. But I can see why you guys, giving back, acknowledging of points. A closed source being that just got they were set up in Seattle from Microsoft, set them up, set the BIOS up, that's where, are they original? See, this is where we get into, are they NPCs or are they human beings that have been, their brains have been wired to become NPCs, to become script runners? I've always favored that over the complete NPC. So it's a closed source being. It can't give you anything. It can't say, that's a good point. It can't do it. It will come up with any explanation so its system doesn't blue screen crash. It'll come up with anything nonsensical like they know how to handle it. And if it's really ready to crash and go blue screen, it will say, I need to look into that myself and shut the conversation down. Well, I have all the facts right here, and I can show you the picture of the smiling dude that goes up to the podium. Here it is on my iPad. I'll just show you. No, I'll research. This is what Tony does. I'll research it on my own. So then the operating system, the closed source being operating system that's about to go blue screen, can then go off on his own and get repaired. It's Starbase 9, get a refit. So it's like, this is ready to go blue screen. If he would have put that iPad in my face, it would have glitched out. I'd like to see, some of these people might glitch out. Maybe that's why they just pass out, or Damon Green just stares at the camera for 20 seconds, or Al Roker. I think, guys, all that is done on purpose, by the way. What I think whenever, we caught him, or they made a mistake. The Al Roker thing where he just stares. Somebody says something about Elvis and he just, that's a trigger word for the MK butterfly or whatever. And he just stares, at the camera for 20 seconds. Now, it's creepy as all, what? It's one of the creepiest things we could see, but I think it was all planned. All planned. He didn't glitch out or anything like that. And you say, Matt, you're saying they put this stuff to float it out for the truth community? I think you're giving yourself and your little band of crazies too much credit. No, that's what they do. Okay, we'll talk about that some other time. We didn't catch him in a mistake. They don't go completely live anyway, even when they're down on the ground, they're talking with fans, and it's Good Morning America. It's still, they'll tell you it's 7-second delayed. It's probably 30 to 45 second to a minute delayed. If he started glitching out, it would have gone to commit. Anything like that. You know what I think? It's not a mistake. It's there for us. So, and what did we do? The proof's in the pudding. The truth community made hundreds and hundreds of videos on Al Roker glitching out. So anyway, that's we don't need to go too far into the weeds on that. So you listening to this, there's nobody, unless you're here to monitor videos like this on behalf of the system and take notes like Thornton Mellon's personal secretary in the economics class and back to school. I mean, unless you're monitoring this, you're listening to this, you're an open source being. You can say, wait a second, that my belief set could be completely wrong, and willing to add new code to yourself, or recode yourself, or reprogram yourself. This is why, they run these mind viruses, or the virus. The virus is set up for all the closed source beings, which is most people. So the virus knows so that when the virus gets to you, for example, or to me, we have veils down, veils drop, but that's also spiritual armor up. So it goes, there's no door here. Warning, beep, beep, beep. This is normally where the mind virus enters. There's no door here. What is this being? Nobody said that, the virus is talking back to its handlers through the minions. Like nobody told me we'd encounter beings like this. I can't get in. That's basically what happens. Our doors are closed. we're an open source being, so it doesn't know how to attack us. Or it might understand on Tuesday how to attack us. Then we change ourselves. We adopt new ideas or become open-minded to this or that. And it's not the same way on Thursday, where the closed source beings, just everybody down the cul-de-sac, they know, they don't even have to work hard anymore to run the virus out on them. It just goes that the ports are permanently open. They know how to access them. And what a coincidence. Again, it's not a coincidence. All the as above, so below, as above. It's fractal, as above, fractal. The larger represents the small. The greater reality represents the computer. Inside the computer, the motherboard looks like a city. There's no coincidence for this. Of course, it's all really. I mean, I talk very definitively, like, of course, but guys, this is way out there stuff. I know, it's all my opinion. But you have a computer virus, right? And then it's just a coincidence. Then you have a human virus attributed to sickness, and then you've got the ultimate V now that's being laid down on it. They're going all out. I mean, this is the biggest, slimiest USB port they've ever plugged in. It's like the Lochnar. It glows green. It's like a ball with a little USB input. It glows. They're going for the full Lochnar input. And this is supposed to override everything, overwrite the processor, overwrite the BIOS, just completely create a new computer almost. I think that they're going all out with this V. So you have the same word, computer virus. It's all, I mean, there's no coincidence here. Of course not. So I think the exterior input, the dark element, the Lochnar, the police lineup, whatever it is, it knows how to get in with its inputs. It knows how to affect the BIOS. It knows how to affect the processor. It knows how to get the processor to guide reality the way it wants. It knows how to plug in its slimy USB drives. And I have a note here, it seeks 100% dominion. It seeks 100% dominion by slowly, it does this with technology, by slowly turning what seems to be a real world, however real this is, the Matrix has rules, by continually devolving it into a virtual world. As everything devolves down towards tech and human beings willingly merge with their iPhones, then, of course, it makes sense. Would it be easier for it to run its viruses and resetting the BIOS? So, of course, as things become more virtual, then it becomes the Lawnmower Man from the movie, or was it Lieutenant Barclay in Star Trek that simply... he started to merge with the computer itself, and there was no differentiation between Lieutenant Barclay as the computer and the physical carbon-based, man. And they seek 100% dominion. I believe I think at this point they know there's open source beings. And again, thank you, Izzo. I will adopt that term forever. That they just simply can't get to, at least right now. And they're losing, but they say, okay, in their back rooms, Jared from Subway, no, the other Jared, get him in here. We're thirsty. They said, well, if we can't get to these open source beings, we can at least trick them. We can't get to the processor directly on these sneaky bastards, but we can trick them. We can trick them. Let's run tricks on them. That we can get them in a roundabout way, kind of in a pathetic way, to help manifest the reality we want. But also, we'll help them see. We at least can cut them off from their peers. So as they gain understanding and knowledge, we'll put them into a box where they'll be the ultimate boy that cried wolf. Once they have an understanding of how reality works, they'll never be able to present it to anybody. First off, because we'll already have made them closed source beings, so when they present something, the person will just scream out, Hong Kong knows how to handle it, and they'll run the other way. They'll run scripts, so they'll never get through to them anyway. But even if we make a mistake there, and we have some back doors into the closed source beings, the way Matthew Broderick was able to speak directly to Joshua through his dial-up modem, spoke to the highest level program inside the United States Pentagon, DARPA Defense, could speak directly to Joshua from his little bedroom with his clothes strewn all over the place, and Ali Sheedy creeping around up there. He could speak direct. So if they think someday we could speak direct, and we find a back door into a closed source being, maybe after, Ken goes blue screen or something, or my butt. Ken, if you're listening to this, nobody knows who you are. Okay, relax. It's not nobody. They just know I have a friend that believes the news. That's all. So the point is, if we get in, we won't be believed anyway, because we'll have been belittled, we'll been used, played. That's how they've played the truth community in 1,000 different ways since we started to take the bait. And we started to take the bait hard around 2008, 2009, definitely through 2012. So it doesn't matter. They simply, this group over here, these open source beings, we can't quite get to them. We can to us, we're the virus to them. And remember how the old virus programs like McAfee, and then in Canada they call it McAfee. Like, why wouldn't it be called the same? In the United States, it's called Mazda, and in Canada, it's called Mazda. I heard it. I was up there, and it was check out the Mazda 6.2. So I'm like, what? What's that? Why don't you just call it the same? Just because there's a fictitious border between countries, and so they, in Canada they call it McAfee, but I think we both call it Symantec. And remember, the old programs used to isolate the virus. Remember, it used to be like the Symantec would be like, good news, the virus in your computer has been isolated and cordoned off. Do you want to delete the program? And we're the virus to it. All right. I'd like to think of myself a little bit better than that, but that's how it sees us. So it just wants to wall us off. It wants to Symantec program us, cordon us off, so we can't screw up the rest of their little creepy plans, that creepy plans on everything. The processor, the BIOS, the operating system, the screen, the processor, the operating system through the projector. And this does, if anybody is struggling with what we've talked about many times in the past, or toyed with, well, Matt, maybe there aren't a lot of real people here. Maybe, they need the real creative beings ultimately to manifest reality. What do they care about all these NPCs and closed source beings? See, this does, if this theory or what is being presented here generally resonates with you, then it does make more sense that it's not NPCs, these people down the cul-de-sac. It's more like real human beings that have been degraded down. This was my original concept, and I know there's issues with it. And, Tony has smart metaphysical Tony has problems with the soul token concept. I'm not talking about my friend Tony, two Tonys here on the opposite ends of the spectrum. Isn't that interesting? The people have a problem with my soul token. You give up too much soul tokens, you cast yourself down into the abyss. But this makes more sense, because if the processor, if people are degrading themselves and putting out the reality through the projector that the slimy Lochnar input wants, then again, just a pure Dolores Cannon NPC type wouldn't have that creative power. So why do they spend so much time on the masses? The original Dolores Cannon description of the NPC was as simple as this. When you walk through a crowded airport, 80, 90% aren't real at all. Completely just part of whatever this game is, or the Sims game is. And the evidence to me, when you walk by somebody, how many times you're going, hello, with some real, meaning to your voice, or a little bit of a the way a real human being would acknowledge another real human being, and they just kind of like open mouth, don't even grunt back. They just kind of walk by. For years, I was like, that's an NPC, but I don't think so anymore. I really don't. I think it's basically an NPC, but it's Pinocchio. It was a real boy or girl. It's devolved itself into a piece of wood, but it still has a little bit of the creative juice that the system, through its Lochnar USB input, has manipulated to produce the reality that it wants. All right? Or again, if they're just NPCs, the guy down the cul-de-sac, why does the reality and its minions spend so much time on them? That doesn't make sense. It makes more sense if they still maybe they have less creative juice as they devolve themselves, and they've given themselves away soul tokens, and they've moved down closer towards the abyss, and they've moved one step closer to merging with a technocracy and trying. They're actually banging on the door trying to get into Ready Player One. Like, bang, 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 let me in. Ready Player One, I want in. They want in. They don't want to be who they are. They want to be the Ready Player One character and drive the DeLorean. I mean, they want in, but they still, if the root of it is still a real Pinocchio, it's that piece of wood could still have some creative power. It just makes more sense to me looking at its behavior. It will tell you what it's what. You can find out everything you need to know about yourself in looking what it's trying to do to you. If you weren't special, if you weren't powerful, why would it work so hard to try to manipulate you? It's just so simple. It's just simple. And so to summarize a few things, the CPU can't create on its own. It creates inside of a program, right? No matter how great the processor to create an incredible work of art, a 3D image of bringing the Mona Lisa into 3D or whatever, it needs to do that inside a program. The programs are the parameters on what the programmer, the coder, or the processor itself can accomplish. You know, David Lynch's Dreamer, the program is being more and more manipulated by the inputs of the system, the tentacles of the system. So that's what all of these systems are for. I'll go over it again. To just think of each system as just a box or shackles or confines on the processor, on the creative beings, or at least if not shackles, it just guides exactly where it wants the creative juices of the processor to go, like a maze. Again, the maze, you can't go left if there's a giant brick wall to your left. The maze runner can only go where the maze will let you go. This is the purpose of its systems. It's inputted these it's put in so many dripping, slimy, disgusting USB inputs to create its maze, to guide the processor to only go in one place. It's created what government is today. That's why it's in every time it plugs its slimy USB drive in, the old programs are never overwritten or they never go away. It just keeps adding on. That's why government just gets bigger, sloppier, more intrusive. Laws are almost never taken off the books unless it's done locally at the lowest of low levels. There's probably still a few people that care. But as you go higher up, it's just one law piled on to another. New buildings are built, expansion of everything, expansion of the military, more bases. You'll never hear, because the world threat is generally gone. I mean, we're all of this Cold War infrastructure and tanks and all this stuff and artillery. We're just going to cut like 40% of it and give it back to you. It'll never happen. Because that never happens, they're not capable of it. It's just like these creatures. They're not Dracula at the head of the table. You'll never be sitting with him like Keanu Reeves in the Bram Stoker's, that creepy Dracula. Could have been so much better, that movie. It's so on the verge of being great, and it's just not. It's the Keanu Reeves from Dangerous Liaison. It's terrible. It has some great moments, but Dracula won't be like, no blood in my cup tonight. Dracula's not capable of that. Not like, give me a juice box. He's not capable of that. Government is never going to be like, we're cutting 40% of the military and giving it back to you. It exposes the true nature of it. Because if anything were real, why wouldn't it be capable of that? Why shouldn't it be capable of that? But you take that just basic common sense to a closed source being and say, Ken, are you listening? Why isn't government ever capable of saying, in this area, we're bloated and we're just going to give these billions of dollars back? It's never happened, never will happen. What script's running? I mean, it's just anybody that's an open source being would say, yes, there's an artificial system here and that gives it away. All right. So it's systems to guide the processor through the maze, government, Hollywood, laws at all, millions of pages of laws, code, statute, ordinance. They tell you the freest country in the world that has the most laws. I mean, it's just like the most people in prison. And it's one contradiction after another. Education system, sewer system, societal systems, norms, the definition of success. So we've been through these. It's all meant to, you know what it is? It's, what's that? I've got to think about that, the name of that video game. I'll be back in a second. I got it. You know what it is? The reality is Dragon's Lair. Now, for those that don't know Dragon's Lair, if you want to pause and look it up, but I'll describe it. You don't need to do that. It is. I remember this video game from, say, I could be wrong a year or two off, but about 87. All right, maybe 86. It was a cartoon where, remember, most of the video games, you're looking at Space Invaders or something, or Defender, just horrible graphics. You fly a little ship around and it looked just like stick figures. It just didn't look like much. Some Donkey Kong, it just didn't look like much. 2D rendering. That's what an arcade was in 85, 86, 87. So then here comes this Dragon's Lair, this beautiful cartoon of this knight saving the damsel in distress, and a beautiful cartoon like a Disney movie. But see, you couldn't just, like a video game today, just have him walk all over and do whatever you want. You could only, it was so old, the video game, and the technology was so limited that just at the right moment when he was about to jump for the rope, you had to hit the joystick exactly in the right way. And if you did, he would grab the rope and swing across or whatever, something like that. And if you didn't hit the joystick in exactly the right way, then he would fall into the crocodile pit. But you just had one little moment to move the joystick at 1 second, and it only had two options. It's like those books. If you're going to go into the room, go to page 510. If you're going to run from the room, then they're limited to, it's like Black Mirror Bandersnatch. It never works. Some great themes and concepts like Colin's speech in Black Mirror Bandersnatch. Black Mirror is a Netflix series. But it just didn't work. You choose the outcome, never works. It's just, you just loop back to the same stupid thing. You run that same thing with President Nixon. You just keep looping back to the same part in the resignation speech where he's talking about not beating his wife. It's the same pathetic thing all over again. So this reality, it's guiding you through all systems. It's just Dragon's Lair. It looks like a video game where you have all these options, but you have no option. The Dragon's Lair video game. If you hit the joystick in the exact right spot and then you got the rope, then it just take you to the next part. You can't decide to go to another part. It's all guiding you through. And people like idiots would spend. If anybody did this, I'm sorry, but I did it once or twice. I'm like, I'm not wasting my money in this damn thing. If I hit the joystick one little spot, I get to I'll just go rent a freaking Disney movie. You didn't have VHS then, but whatever. It was a waste of money. So you could figure out how to move the joystick and then eventually get all the way through Dragon's Lair. Everybody wanted to see the cartoon play out, so we'd all gather around, watch these idiots. We'd never put up the money for them. We'd have them they'd put quarter after quarter in. It made more sense to go to Donkey Kong, and actually it's or Pac-Man, much more challenging. Anyway, whatever. So the reality of using its systems, it's just people think they're in an open, it's a free-range chicken, open environment, but they're in Dragon's Lair. They have no real ability to make decisions, to do anything outside the way the video game is guiding them. And it is interesting because I think that's a very good parallel. Because at the end of Dragon's Lair, you get the princess, it's wonderful. You didn't do shit. You didn't do squat. Caught my first tube today. One other note here that I wrote down that's not really related too much to the metaphor of the small computer system to the greater reality, but it could be very, very important, so I might as well mention it. We'll talk about it in detail some other time. It relates to as above, so below, and adding a back end onto that, so below, as above. But let me just tell you what happened. Somebody came to me, and this person seems to be, I don't know him at all at this point, just a few emails, but does seem to be in the know. So I said, let's continue to email back and forth. Please, it's pretty hard for me to keep up with email. Please do it in small doses, and I'll try to get that knowledge, interpret it the best I can, and get it out to you. And, think about the number of people have approached me over the years, and 90% of the time or more, it's total BS. And they have the same script of how they approach me when it is BS. It's usually the dangling of a carrot. I mean, it took me 5 minutes to see through how these tactics they try to employ on me like I'm some kind of idiot. They'll be like, Matt, you're close here and here and here, but do you really want to know? Like, dangle the carrot? Do you really want to know? I mean, it's like it's like the person, I'm not going to go down that, forget that story, but they all do it in the same way. A few people, like the Tony I've talked about several times, they didn't try to make a deal with me or say you're close. They just said, this is what you need to know, and just started giving me information to help my current theories without asking for anything in return. That's how a real, I think, helpful person would do it. And this person took a similar approach. Say, hey, Matt, want to be cool? Here's what you really need to know, but you got to contact me. You got to agree to this or that. I was like, come here. Yeah, I'm going to get in some Faustian bargain with you. Yeah, give me a break. Making a hand gesture right now. But this person was different. I got that a better sense. And they came and they said, Matt, so the point is this. The as above, so below. Don't forget the back end, so below, as above. He says, that's extremely important to remember that back end. What happens here affects the above. Okay, for what we'll talk about that some other time, whatever that means to you. But then it related back to, he's basically saying, don't forget both parts. And that does relate back to all the interesting things Tony have told me, the smart, with the esoteric knowledge, Tony, not my best friend who believes CNN is real. Tony has told me, hey, you're here. I was trying to tell you guys for a long time that we're just here as like a small little pinky of higher self. And Tony keeps coming back to me going, no. You are extremely important for your higher self to realize certain things. You have to recognize that you can walk out of this game here. So you're higher. It's not like, Matt, you keep presenting it like you're this nothing little part of higher self, like one of 1,000 tentacles, and higher self knows everything. And it's just you're just here to test the waters, or you're just here to have a bite of a hamburger, and then your higher self can experience that. And he's like, no, you're critical for you to accomplish things here. So your higher self gets it, or can understand certain things, or can walk out of the game. So you say, don't belittle your role here. You're not just a little tentacle. So when this person presented that, I thought back to, Tony's been pushing that on me, saying you're misinterpreting some of my initial, guidance. And do I just bow down to Tony and believe everything? I've talked to him on the phone, and he's just a god, and he has every Harry Potter tomb of how everything works. No, I don't bow down to everything he says, but I get a sense of people that people have a certain level of knowledge, and they know how things work, and I listen very carefully. This person's highly intelligent. I'm not just going to bow down like everything he says is right, but I'm going to listen. So same with this person, but I don't know this person nearly as well. So then I started thinking, well, wait a second. He's saying, remember the back end, as above, so below, but remember so below, as above. And I thought, well, okay, wait a second. These jerks, the minions on behalf of whatever here, the minions like Melvin P., minions like the lead singer of U2 that keeps $99 and sends $1 off to his charity. I sent a couple cases of water to Africa. These minions, their power is here, right? So I thought, that maybe that second part is critically important, so below as above. They seem to be fighting their battle here. All their eggs are in this basket, and they're maybe using this to affect the above, to affect or infect potentially the greater nature of your higher self. So I was thinking, it seems like they can get you here, no doubt about it. I mean, look at the guy down your cul-de-sac and what he believes, and just watching reruns of Mary Tyler Moore Show and Rhoda every night. I mean, with these, most people have succumbed here. So it's like, well, one of the reasons they potentially work so hard here, if they've trapped the real spiritual beings into a certain mindset or whatever, is the second part, the so below as above. They could then use that to screw us over somewhere else or extend their power somewhere else. But their power, they don't have that. You just get the sense. People going, well, how do you know, Matt? You astral travel off to these places. I don't have any of those experiences. I never even did DMT. I don't want to. I tap into what I call inner knowing. And I'm not going to be right all the time, but I'm going to present what I believe. And as I have a little bit of a track record here, like 10 years, a lot of what I've presented is kind of, people kind of over time go, yeah, that's probably pretty close to how it works. Those mistakes were on purpose. So I have a bit of a track record. I don't know. I don't, have any hidden secrets as to where this comes from. It's just my belief of how things work through observation. So all their eggs are in this basket down here. But one of the reasons they could be doing all they're doing here is you get the sense they're not powerful at all, or have maybe almost no reach outside of the snow globe. But by doing it here, maybe they can try to extend their influence into something greater than here, per the so below as above, the back end of that. And I'd be curious, to what Leavitt would say about that. So, that's a really, these types of themes, what I'm just talking about here, not the computer theme, but what I'm talking about here is, this is not my thing. Okay, this is above my pay grade. This is not my role here to be going into these areas too much. I just thought it was very interesting what this individual presented, and it did kind of jived up with what my observations are on how, like the Melvin Peas, on behalf of whatever, all their eggs are here. Why do they put so much effort into their manipulations here? We always thought it was for loosh, for energy, but that back end of as above, so below, as above could be a reason for it. It's just worth keeping on the table, and it'll take others to figure that out. That's certainly not my area of expertise. Again, talking about it too, because it did relate to what some things Tony has told me about. Not the Tony who I went to high school with, who believes in that Anderson Cooper is really 360, or that Aaron Burnett's really out front, but the Tony that gives me the good information as to how things work here. Thanks for listening, guys. I'm just going to keep going for a few seconds to remove the timestamp, but when I paused it to end the video, guys, it was 10110.1. I kid you not. I was, 1 hour, 1 minute, 10.1. 10110.1. Now it's not that, but that's what it was when I was officially done the video. The numbers are they're part of reality itself. They flow through reality. They send messages. It's the gematria is real.